I kept hearing a few things. So when it happened, when I got the call being traded, I was like at a movie premiere or something. I remember I left, I got the call, and I was in the car. I got out the car, so I was walking down the street. It tripped me out because it's like, at that time, I was 9 years in, fully dedicated, and I was just trying to, I wanted to get one more shot at it, especially with Bron being gone, and not to get the opportunity. I think that's what hurt the most instead of getting traded because, I had in my mind that, this shit ain't gonna last forever, in the sense of like, something's gonna happen if we don't get to the finals or compete for a championship, you know what I mean? So for me, just not getting that opportunity hurt the worst.
So you getting traded for Kawhi the year LeBron leaves, leaving the team that you were drafted by 9 years with, leaving your best friend, seeing Kawhi go over there and them triple bounce their way into the finals, the Warriors drop like flies, and you see your team that you were just traded from, that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it, win a championship. How difficult was that to kind of digest and kind of understand?
Man, it was tough from the standpoint of, it started to seem like I was the problem. That was the most frustrating part, was like people looking at it, oh, they doing it soon as he leave. Oh, see, maybe he was the problem the whole time. That was the most frustrating part for me, and that was the part that sucked and hurted the most for me because it's like, man, any real motherfuckers like, look, we couldn't get past one person. You telling me
the problem went to LA. That's what happened.
Right. The Kang was the problem.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you telling me that, come on, you know what I mean? But that was the part that was more frustrating, that, the common mind.
The Lakers blew out the Warriors last night, but as the trade deadline approaches, are there roster tweaks coming? I asked LeBron about what it's like to live through trade season last night. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Teams are always just trying to figure out a way how to get better, especially the ones that believe they can make a run for a championship. So that's the way it's always been not always, but for the last, I guess, 5 to 7 years, 10 years of my career, with the trade deadline and the buyouts and things of that nature. So it's 10 days. There's going to happen really fast, so we'll see what happens over the next 10 days.
So, Dave, look, it's changed. When he said, for the last 5 or 10 years, when LeBron started, trade season, transactions were not as crazy, but they are crazy now. Yes, so who are the top trade and buyout candidates for the Lakers as we approach this March 25th deadline?
Well, I'll start by saying, based on the Lakers roster construction and where they're going to be at salary cap-wise, it's going to be most likely buyout candidates over trade targets for the Lakers, because if they were to do away with some of their young talent in order to pursue a trade, they're going to be in a tough situation this summer moving forward. But let's start with 3 names. Andre Drummond of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who's been parked on the bench for about a month now as they try to pursue trade targets. And I'm hearing that the Cavs are receiving interest in them, but because he has such a high salary number, it's going to probably be tough for them. Perhaps need a 3-team scenario in order to get that trade. Otherwise, it would be a buyout. Let's go to J.J. Redick of the Pelicans, whose shooting percentage is down a little bit this year, only shooting 36% from 3, but he's one of the true pure shooters in the game, and someone, at this stage of his career, trying to get that championship. Last year was the first year of his career he missed the playoffs. And we don't know how much time he has left, and we'll see if he gets dislodged from the Pelicans, because he is not one of those guys that's been parked yet like some of these other guys. The other guy, P.J. Tucker, who was such a vital piece on those Houston Rockets teams that knocked on the door of making the finals and upsetting the Golden State Warriors. Toughness, grit, corner three-point shooting, playoff experience, and there's going to be a bunch of suitors for him as well. There already are.
Yes.
The Rockets are receiving a lot of interest. Those are the names I would start with at the top of the Lakers list.
Yeah, Tucker is going to be a trade, not a buyout for sure. As Dave points out, there's lots of interest. The name that I like there is Andre Drummond. I think Andre Drummond has become underrated because he's been sort of pigeonholed as this empty stat stuffer guy, empty calorie stats. And I think some of that criticism has been fair at times. but the stats have meaning. It's not just the points and rebounds. He gets a ton of steals for his center, which is really valuable. And if you put a guy like that with LeBron James, he's going to look 20% better immediately, rolling to the rim, dunking, getting offensive rebounds. He's the kind of vertical threat that LeBron really likes that they do not have this year with Marc Gasol and Montrezl Harrell as their centers. I think he'd be great for the Lakers. And I agree with Dave. I think the Cavs could make an Andre Drummond trade right now. I just don't think it's a trade that they particularly want to make. I don't think they've gotten an offer that is to their liking. I think it's more bad money coming back to them, not a lot of assets. So if it gets to buyout territory, I really like the Andre Drummond fit with the Lakers. And I think he's become underrated.
I agree. And look, the Lakers need a dynamic roller and a shot blocker. And if they can't get Andre Drummond, I would look into bringing back JaVale McGee. LeBron James and the rest of some of the Lakers are very familiar with him. He's familiar with the organization. He's what they're missing in that centerpiece. We all know that LeBron loves spacing. He would love to have a guy like J.J. Redick. And I know J.J. Redick's shooting percentage is down, but sometimes a change of scenery will change that. And knowing that he's playing on a contender, because KCP hasn't been consistent this year, and we know that he elevated his game last year, but just having a guy like J.J. Redick on the court, even if he don't touch the ball, is a huge decoy and can open up the paint for LeBron James, Anthony Davis when he comes back, and Dennis Schroeder going downhill, because now the paint is wide open. You have a dynamic roller. If you could add a guy like JaVale McGee, low risk for high reward, you won't have to pay him much because he'll be on the vet minimum if the Cavs buy him out.
Yeah, Park, certainly JaVale McGee is someone who was well-liked in the Lakers organization, was one of those bodyguards along with Dwight Howard protecting Anthony Davis in his first year with the Lakers. Because they traded him to Cleveland, JaVale will actually have to end up being on another roster first before he could end up on the Lakers and be waived. Of course, the Cavs front office have been very active ever since Kobe Altman took over, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they were to work out some sort of deal to move him. And certainly Jared Allen is the center of the future with that organization. But there is another hurdle for them to jump over to be able to eventually grab McGee if he is.
Well, Dave, you know they know how to make things happen and make things work. It's not hard to get a third team involved and say, hey, we're going to trade JaVale. All you have to do is cut him, and then the Lakers go pick him right back up.
I do want to look at what the Lakers are dealing with, right? Because they have more than $100 million tied up in LeBron, in AD, in KCP, in Kyle Kuzma, Alex Caruso, Dennis Schroeder, and Andre Drummond are all notable free agents. And Montrezl Harrell, he has a player option this summer. So, Brian, where do the Lakers go from here?
Well, they're already pretty much at the salary cap with the guys they have under contract. So any dreams that any Laker fan might have of going out and signing a big free agent, that's not going to happen. Their moves really probably are to try to bring back the players that they have and sign them to contracts that could potentially be movable later. And I know that to Laker fans, the idea of bringing back Dennis Schroeder right now may not sound all that exciting, but I think they're probably seriously going to have to look at it. Richard just referenced this in a very strange set of maneuvers. It appears that Schroeder took off of his IG bio that he was a Lakers point guard, then put it back on when somebody might have mentioned it to him, and then in the locker room after the game took it off again. I have no idea what to make of all of that.
You know what to make of it, Brian. You know what to make of it.
Richard,
it was childish.
He turned down a $20 million a year extension at midseason. The Lakers are going to have to make another offer, and that offer cannot be $20 million. It's going to have to be an offer that they could someday at some point trade him, but then he's also unrestricted. If he doesn't like what the Lakers have to offer, he can walk to Chicago or even to Toronto or somewhere else.
Let him go. This isn't.
But Richard, they can't replace him.
I understand that. I understand that they can't replace him, but in this series, he looked very replaceable. Now, I understand that you're not going to overreact to a series, but it takes a certain mentality to win a championship. It takes a certain mentality to play with LeBron James. And to go out and put out that little petty stuff, and then he puts it back up there, obviously, because he started trending on Twitter. And I'm going to say something that I know is not real. They need a third-level, high-level player, and I'm not saying, Drew Holiday's name has been so popular, but this is why I'm going to say this. Anthony Davis can't carry the load when LeBron James is out. LeBron James can't carry the load when AD is out. They need another player, so when AD needs a break, LeBron James has another player that he can count on. When LeBron James needs to be rested like a 37-year-old superstar who has the most minutes in NBA history, Anthony Davis needs another person he can count on. Now, everybody was hoping that was Dennis Schroeder, but it's obviously not. It's obviously not. So they need to find a third player that can pair with those guys when the other one is out, because that is what's the future is going to look like.
I mean, it must going to rain outside or the sun is out or whatever the case may be, because I agree with RJ. They need a third option type guy. They need a guy that could go out there and get his own. But I'm going to say this, okay? But they do have to move some pieces. Maybe try to get off a Kyle Kuzma contract and trade him and get something valuable back. Or maybe even try to sign and trade Dennis Schroeder to the people out there that do have interest in signing him or acquiring him. But at the end of the day, Richard was right. And Brian, you know this along. Rachel, you also know this as well. Playing alongside LeBron James comes a different type of pressure. And if you don't have that mentality and you don't have that dog in you, that sense of urgency or that mental toughness, it's not going to work. So it looks gravy from the outside, but until you get in that locker room and until you start getting all that media attention and everything else, you don't understand the pressure that comes alongside playing with LeBron James, especially in a Lakers uniform.
Look, now, Kendrick, I'm fanning myself because I have witnessed a miracle in church today.
Oh, blocked! Harry was right there and had it thrown right back in his face. Holiday throws it up and a Tactical with the slam. The punctuation mark.
The Bucks-Nets series has been turned upside down. So how much pressure is on Milwaukee now that they've tied it up at 2? We'll get to that in a second. Booker and the Suns. Man, they're the kings of the ring. Is it their time to shine? And coming off a big Game 3, does the fate of the Clippers world rest on Paul George's shoulders? And we had to count down our top 5 unfinished ankle breakers after what Kyrie did to poor Thanasis. The Jump starts right now. Yeah. Get ready. We got a full house today. Welcome to The Jump. I'm George Sedano, in for our fearless leader, Rachel Nichols. I'm joined by Ramona Shelburne, ESPN NBA insider and NBA champ, and one half of the All the Smoke podcast duo, Matt Barnes. Coming up, we'll get into why Mark Cuban is heated with some of the reporting around Luka, Rick Carlisle, and the Mavs. But first, let's start with the Nets, who were dealt a tough hand yesterday when Kyrie Irving left the game with a sprained right ankle. He didn't return to the game, and our Rachel Nichols reported that Kyrie left the game on crutches and in a walking boot, with James Harden's status also in question at the moment. Here's what Steve Nash said after the game.
I have no idea, what's going to happen with Kai in the coming days. We'll cross our fingers and hope that it's better than I don't know, better than what? Better than missing the next game. It is tricky with Kevin. We all got to pitch in. We all got to play together. We got to move the ball. And I thought tonight we got a little single-minded, looking for Kevin every time. Puts a little bit too much pressure on him. It makes us a little more predictable, I thought, which puts a lot of burden on him. Yeah, Kai, x-rays were negative, but we'll have to see how it goes tomorrow and further tests and treatment. And then James, I think it's an independent case. I don't want James to be rushed back. If he's able to play next game or the game after, that's fantastic. If he's not, I don't want to rush him back and jeopardize, doing something worse or making this a long-term injury. So we'll see. We'll have to take all these things into account and evaluate them and try to make a smart decision.
All right, Matt, so how does the Kyrie injury change the outlook of this series?
It changes it a lot, and welcome to the NBA head coaching, Steve Nash. I mean, it's kind of been free-flowing. Obviously, they've had to play without stars, but to have 2 of your stars down at this point of the season is tough. Kyrie's ankle touched the ground. So being a former player, You always hope for the best, but I don't really see him returning in the next game or two. Obviously, as Steve said, they don't want to push James. Hamstrings you can't push even if they wanted to. So James will know early on if he can't go. If they can't, a lot of pressure is going to be on KD to not only score, but empower his team and have them believing in themselves and also be able to make plays for that team because there's not too many playmakers. This team's offense is predicated upon their normal one-on-one mismatches with their superstars, and then defense adjusts and they make plays for other people. So without 2 of your 3 superstars, KD's going to have to burden a lot of the load, but I think he's capable of it. So we're going to see.
You know what? They still have Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
Kevin Durant, best player in the world. I mean, Kevin Durant to me is the best player still left in the playoffs.
Agreed.
I mean, and that's not a diss on anybody else. That's just how good KD is.
Yep.
And I think when you talk about playmakers, like, one, he can create his own shot. 2, I think Blake Griffin can play make a little bit. Matt, you've played with him in that role. And there was some question of whether or not Blake was hurt in that game because he didn't play a lot of the second half. I checked on that. He's absolutely fine. There was no injury to Blake Griffin in that game for us. So I actually think that's part of why the Nets went and got him. That's why they liked him so much, is because of his ability to play make. In this series, he's been more of a defender on Giannis. But in this series, I think now if Kyrie's going to be out, and I mean, Matt's right. Like, I don't know how he's going to play with that ankle as bad as his. And the Nets are a team that have essentially, they've load managed everybody. They've learned how to play like that. And Kyrie is actually the only net who has a negative, when he's not on the court, they have a negative net rating. It's like minus 4.6. Everybody else is positive. So he's the one guy that there's a real effect when he's not on the court. But this is, as you said, welcome to coaching in the playoffs, Steve Nash.
So,
have some adjustments.
Coach Barnes, what kind of adjustments would you make with this lineup right now?
Coach, first of all.
There you are.
Like I said, KD is I think Steve made a great point, too. I think since everyone was down, they tried to force feed KD. And it almost looked like KD was forcing when we know KD has never really been about that. He is so smooth and efficient and effective that it's just going to be a different role now. I mean, KD hasn't had a situation where he's really had to do everything. And he's going to have to do everything now, which we all think he's capable of. Other guys are going to have to step up, though. This is what you want, though, as a role player. Obviously, you never want to lose their star players, but when the role players have an opportunity to step up, and they have role players that are capable of doing that, including Blake Griffin, which is crazy we're calling him a role player, this team still has what it takes, but I think all the pressure shifts to Milwaukee now.
So can Blake turn back the clock a little bit, and can Joe Harris take on a bigger load here, Mo?
Well, and here's the thing. George, I'm going to steal Mike D'Antoni saying, with the ball finds energy. Right. Okay, so when you don't have Kyrie Irving out there creating for you, when you don't have him breaking people down off the dribble, the ball just has to move. Yeah. Because the ball can move faster than any one player can penetrate or dribble. Okay, so I think in this situation, you just fall back on those offensive concepts that Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash popularized in Phoenix. I mean, I think that's how they play. It shouldn't matter as much if you don't have. Now it hurts because you don't have that guy who can break people down. But they just need to move the ball.
Yeah, I would like to see Blake get back to what he used to do with us with the Clippers, because you see so many oftentimes he'll get the rebound and pass it to a guard. Blake was one of the best pushing, point forward, ball handling, playmaking bigs we had in the game. So I think he needs to turn back the clock a little bit just on his mindset and his aggressiveness. I think Blake has done a perfect job of doing what they needed him to do. They're going to need them to do more now, and I think he'll be capable of that.
And don't sleep on Bruce Brown. I know a lot of people gave him a lot of grief after Game 3, but that kid has played really well for this team this season. Real quick, before we move on, do you think we'll see Harden in this series?
I don't think we'll see him next game. I think we'll possibly see him in Game 6, if at all.
I think we only see him if they absolutely have to try. Like the same way we saw Anthony Davis. Like, if you're facing elimination, you might as well give him a chance to try to play. But the thing with hamstrings, when you hurt them multiple times, you just need to rest.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right, one of the keys to this series for the Bucks has been the defense of P.J. Tucker, who held Kevin Durant to 9 points on 3 of 12 shooting as his primary defender in Game 4. Steve Nash felt that Tucker was a little too physical defensively. Let's take a listen to him after the game.
You know, he's playing extremely physical and made it difficult. You know, that's his role on their team. And I thought it was borderline non-basketball physical at times, but that's the playoffs. You know, you have to adapt and adjust.
So, Momo, do you agree with Coach Nash?
I think he's doing a pretty good job of setting the tempo for the next game here. Look, P.J. Tucker's a physical player. That's what he does. I mean, that's why you have him on the team. We saw this movie before when he was in Houston. Kevin Durant was in Golden State. We've seen him defend Kevin a few times. He's been pretty effective in that role, but I don't think he'll get away with as much when they go back to Brooklyn.
No.
Right?
Normally after games like this, Teams have guys that are going to send a bunch of film to the league. PJ Tucker, and I'm a defensive-minded guy, so if they're not going to call it, beat the shit out of it, or beat KD down, excuse my language, beat KD up. That's what you're supposed to do until these refs to call it, make an adjustment. But like I said, there's going to be a lot of film sent in on what he did, and they allowed him to get away with it. There's a few, maybe 4 or 5 times where I thought KD drove to the basket and was clearly hacked, and they just didn't call it. Now, if that is that playoff basketball, they're going to have to adjust to it, but I doubt that. I think there's going to be a lot more eyes on the situation now that we've kind of seen to go back and forth. But again, KD's going to have to step up, and you don't count on KD having back-to-back bad shooting games because, again, he's probably the most efficient player we've ever seen in this game. So Tucker's going to have his handfuls, but I definitely expect a different type of game because this is old. This is late 90s, early 2000s type defense, and I love it, but you can't play that way anymore. So I was surprised that they allowed him to do as much as they did last game.
You know what's interesting is that we talked about welcome to the playoffs, Coach Nash, right? Well, he's got this part down, right? Whether it's Phil Jackson or Pat Riley or Larry Brown or all these guys from back in the day, they worked the officials or the league for these kind of calls, right? Moving forward. It's smart. It's a smart move by him.
Absolutely. This is exactly what like they said, they have a whole crew that I'm sure sent 25 clips to the league, and the league has to look at every single one. And like I said, whether they adjust it or not, these refs are going to be aware of what happened last game, and I expect a different type of game to be called.
Well, they're sending clips to the league, and then they're talking about it in your press conference.
And now we're talking about it. So expect
mission accomplished there. There you go, Steve. We got you. All right, let's get to some news out of Dallas today. Corey on Twitter today calling it total BS, and he actually used the word, so not just BS. Matt, what's your reaction to this story?
On my kids' podcast, they have a segment called Cap or Fact. This is complete cap. I don't see Luka going anywhere. I think he's gonna walk in the shoes of Dirk and probably surpass him at some point. I think he's going to be a lifetime Maverick. They asked if he's going to sign a Supermax, and he said earlier, I think everyone knows the answer to that. So Luka's in a great situation. If anything, he just puts a little bit of pressure on him, knowing that they really need to go out and get him a Batman. Porzingis is too inconsistent and too healthy. His health is such an issue, but Luka's perfect in there. Great owner, great system, fan base that loves him to death. So I don't see Luka going anywhere.
By the way, I love the plug for the Barnes boys.
Yeah, come on, man.
Love that.
Total cap, though, Momo. Yes.
The plug for the Barnes boys.
Yeah, come on, man.
Love that.
Total cap, though, Momo. Yes or no?
Look, I think so when you lose, there's friction. Okay, when you lose, there's people who are wondering why did you lose, what went wrong. This is what we do. Okay, we either write stories about it or it's discussed internally. I don't think Luka would leave because of conflict with the front office guy. He's not even really the guy there. So to me, like if Luka were to ever leave, first of all, I think he's going to sign Supermax.
Right.
He's going to be there for a long time.
Well, he said the words. I think you know what the answer to that is when asked about that.
Yeah, there might be, but we're way too early to be talking about is Luka going to leave.
Right.
We can start the narrative.
Right.
I mean, obviously, this is what we do. We got a talk show to fill, okay? But I just watched this man have an unbelievable series.
Yeah.
He is that good, and he is ready.
It's going to be his league soon.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, I did not realize how good he was. I mean, we knew how good he was, but then when you see him in person, you're like, oh, okay, you're ready. They need to get him somebody because you don't want to waste these years. Usually you say the prime years are like 26, 27. No, he's ready.
Yeah.
He's 22 and he's ready.
Right.
So usually you say the prime years are like 26, 27. No, he's ready.
Yeah.
He's 22 and he's ready.
Right.
So the clock is ticking, but we got a long runway. Let's give the Mavs some time to work here. I mean, they tried one shot with Porzingis here. This doesn't seem like the right pairing.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like Porzingis is a nice player, but probably not the best fit next to Luka. So let's give them some time to maneuver. And if next season we're going into the same place and he's still losing in the first round, okay.
Well, look at this graphic here where it talks about the potential projection for his potential contract, what they've got in cap space. Because remember, they were one of the teams that was trying to carve out some space for Giannis had Giannis become available. Right. So they've got some maneuverability here for sure.
They do. I definitely think they do. I think they need to re-sign Tim Hardaway. I think he is showing his work time and time again. Very unsung player. The jury's out on Porzingis. I mean, he'll show you flashes where he looks like a top player, then he'll show you flashes where you didn't even know he played. So I think I would love to see more consistency out of him because when he's playing his game, he is one. They were the top duo last year in the bubble, and they couldn't because when he's playing his game, he is one. They were the top duo last year in the bubble, and they couldn't duplicate that. So again, I think they need to go out and get him a real Robin, and I think this team is sitting in a nice position to contend for the next handful of years.
What has been the biggest difference with Porzingis defensively? Like, I feel like he was a pretty good defender in New York.
Yeah.
And
I think
is it
health.
injury?
I think it's health.
It's just
Yeah,
that?
I don't think he like when you watch him land,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like he trusts his legs when he lands, right? Like in a sense that like you have to trust your body. When you've had a lot of injuries, that's hard.
Yeah, and he used to go chase down blocks.
Yep.
I mean, that was scary because he's so tall and then
Yep.
so long. Like, he was really a force to be reckoned with. And all that tells me is I don't think he's lost that desire. I think he's either lost the trust in his body or he's not fully healthy that is going to allow him to cover the whole entire floor.
Now, Momo, there was a story about Rick Carlisle, also in Bleacher Report, about him potentially eyeing the Bucks job if that became open. And Mark Cuban addressed that one as well on Twitter and basically said that it was an opinion piece, that it was not a factually based piece. What do we know about Rick Carlisle's opinion piece, that it was not a factually based piece? What do we know about Rick Carlisle's future?
Well, look, he's besides Pop, the longest tenured head coach we have here, head of the NBA Coaches Association. I think the respect for him is all over the league. I mean, maybe unless you ask for Rajon Rondo, right? Okay, but look, I think this is going to be Rick's choice if he wants to, however long he wants to coach here. Look, Luka has a good relationship with Jamal Mosley on that staff. Like we know that there are other options there, but I think Rick's an institution there in Dallas.
Yeah,
I can't see him wanting to leave Luka Doncic.
Agreed. I think he's the right fit. Again, I just love Mark Cuban. I mean, he puts out every fire with his own voice, not through someone else. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks. So again, as we discussed earlier, I think this just comes with losing. The pot's going to be stirred. Rumors are going to come out, whether it be true or not. But I don't see them losing any of these two key pieces for
Some of it is personality there too. I mean, there's certain superstars who are willing to flex. Certain superstars are going to flex their power. There's certain superstars who are willing to flex. Certain superstars are going to flex their power. I don't see Luka as that type. I mean, do you see Luka as the type to try to force?
I just think he wants to win.
Just wants to win.
Right.
And by the way, so does Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
So before we start saying, there's a problem with Mark, let's see what Mark Cuban does here. This isn't an owner who's going to be worried about the luxury tax, the salary cap. This is a guy who wants to get stuff done.
Right, and they have maneuverability. They have the ability to kind of make some things happen this offseason. You mentioned Hardaway Jr. Potentially could come back, and they've got some extra cap space beyond that potentially. Can they make a deal with some of the current pieces they have to bring in different players? We see in this league that turnover happens regularly, so it's certainly possible. Down Nance's ankles yesterday. We'll count down the best unfinished ankle breakers in just a moment, so stick around here on The Jump. But first, it's time for our
miss. It's a make or miss league, baby. That's it.
All right, make exclamation marks. End of the Suns Nuggets. Look at CP3 here, man. Exclamation marks. End of the Suns Nuggets. Look at CP3 here, man.
I love it.
And then the Suns steal the inbound, and it ends up with an 8 and slam here. So, Ramona, how relentless is this Sun squad right now?
Listen, I'm so impressed with them and the job Monty Williams has done. I mean, to me, when he talks about, I want to we can't get upset about the foul calls. We can't get upset being high and low. I mean, to me, this is just, that's mental toughness. That is not just a young team doing well. That is mental toughness to go all the way.
This team is hungry, and they're following arguably one of the greatest leaders to ever play this game. I was disappointed when I thought CP was going to be hurt with that shoulder. He fought through that and is leading this team and has a lot of these young players playing like they've been here before, and they haven't.
All right, miss. Predictability. Staying with the Suns, watch Chris Paul freeze the Joker here.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, hit the mid-range right there. Matt, how many times have you seen that move by him?
All the time. He probably still does it. So, I mean, incredible move again. I mean, hats off. I couldn't be more happy for this guy. He probably still does it. So, I mean, incredible move again. I mean, hats off. I couldn't be more happy for this guy alone because, as he said, he was written off. He's definitely not done, and he's leading this team to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, and look, he's saying it's not about him, right? He's saying, don't make this about me, it's about the team. But let's be real, this is about him too. And honestly, everyone out there should be enjoying this, because at this stage of his career, considering all the bad luck he's had with injuries and whatnot, we didn't know if we'd see him here. So, all right, next, make threading the needle. Back to Milwaukee. Drew Holiday with the rock here. And he nutmegs KD. But then on the way back up, Giannis leaves him hanging. Come on, Giannis. So, Ramona, does Drew deserve a little dap there? Come on.
Claps his own hand at the end.
Yeah.
KD's 7 feet tall, so that's kind of a decent target.
Oh,
right?
So there's like a life hack in there.
You don't have to go around with somebody that tall. It's
Milwaukee smells blood. They better finish while they can.
Yeah, it's true. To go around with somebody that tall. It's
Milwaukee smells blood. They better finish while they can.
Yeah, it's true.
For sure. Next, miss finishes. End of the first quarter. Watch this ankle breaker by Kyrie on Thanasis. Oh, my goodness.
You know what, though? A word for Thanasis. A word. He got up.
He did.
Usually when you get your ankle broken, you're so embarrassed, you stay down, pretend like you got hurt. He got up and challenged the shot. Good for him.
He didn't even let his knees touch the ground, too.
Yeah.
That's very athletic on his part, but still challenge the shot, too. I love this kid. He's full of energy. Look at him. He celebrates after the miss. I love the way he plays the game.
He does. He plays hard for sure. All right, it's time to run it back, though. The top unfinished ankle breakers of all time. Unfinished. 2010, Brandon Jennings on Steph. Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Oh, we got to finish that.
That's just injury avoidance on Steph's part, though.
Yeah.
That was back when his ankles used to actually break all the time.
Before Pablo Torre wrote that story about it on ESPN Magazine. 2009, Darren Williams on Jason Terry. Oh, come on, you got to hit that.
Stay down. Look at him, just sat down. He's like, okay, I'd never mind.
Jason Terry's been on the wrong.
Oh, come on, you got to hit that.
Stay down. Look at him, just sat down. He's like, okay, I'd never mind.
Jason Terry's been on the wrong end of some bad highlights, lowlights for him.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. Well,
We're just showing it 7 times. Sorry, JT.
The LeBron one for sure. 2013, Jared Jack on Meta World Peace.
Oh,
Meta.
Jared Jack does that to me. He's still playing.
In the G League.
Yeah.
Sioux Falls, I believe. There you
I
go.
think he's going to the Big 3.
Yep.
Oh, yeah? That'd be cool. 2004, D Wade on Raja Bell.
Oh,
wow.
Now that one, ooh.
Did that get blocked?
He
What
just
happened
tried to
there?
sell the push-off. Look, he's trying to sell the foul right there.
Yeah, he did. Raja going to text me. Why'd you show that, man? Good job by Kirilenko there, though, on the challenge. 2012, Jameer Nelson on Paul Pierce. Uh-oh.
That's it.
Oh, Paul! Oh, no!
Jameer Nelson.
That was like one of the first funny Twitter internet memes. That one was one of them.
That could have been a serious injury.
That could have been really bad.
Yeah, that looks like a torn knee.
No, yeah, for sure. Paul, you're more agile than people give you credit for, man. We got you. Okay? Yeah, for sure. Paul, you're more agile than people give you credit for, man. We got you, okay?
Man.
All right. Coming up, we had a Suns sweep, but it wasn't without Nichols alongside Matt Barnes and Ramona Shelburne. Last night, Nikola Jokic was ejected from Game 4, as you saw there, with a flagrant foul, too, after taking a wild swing in frustration at Cameron Payne. Michael Malone and Jokic were asked about it after the game. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, well, I think one of you guys should request to ask that question to one of the officials.
I did.
So I'd love to hear your answer. But I don't know. I think it was something along the lines of wind up, malicious intent, some other mumbo jumbo. But obviously, you lose the MVP. It's going to make it even harder to try to stave off elimination.
I thought I wanted to change the rhythm of the game. I wanted to give us some energy, maybe to change the whistle a little. I wanted to change the rhythm of the game. I wanted to give us some energy, maybe to change the whistle a little bit. So I tried to make a hard foul. Did I hit him? Did I hit him? Did I didn't hit him? We don't know. So I say sorry if I did, because I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't want to injure him or hit him in the head on purpose. So I watched the game in the locker room to cool off a little bit.
So players tweeted after the game, or actually in the moment, actually. Let's go to John Moran, who tweeted, playoff elimination game, give him a flagrant 1 and play ball, man. Trae Young also tweeted, a flagrant 2? Wow. So, Matt, was the ejection on Jokic too harsh?
Absolutely. I think if this is a regular season game, you possibly, with how soft the game is called now, that you possibly call this a flagrant 2. But considering the circumstance, elimination game in the second round of the playoffs with your MVP, and you got to look at his history. He's never had on the playoffs with your MVP, and you got to look at his history. He's never had. Now, if this was me, I could see them throwing me out in this kind of situation because I've had some run-ins. But Jokic hasn't had any of that. He's out there playing every day. Again, this is the MVP and elimination game. If anything, a flagrant 1, and like Josh said, keep it moving. But the fact that you took the best player off his team in an elimination game, and he's the MVP in the playoffs, it's just not a good look. I think they made a mistake.
You know why you're successful in life, Matt? Because you are self-aware.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right? You're like, if this is me, I'm probably getting thrown out.
Right.
And we're friends, so I can say this to you. It's probably true.
Right.
We're all friends here.
Yeah.
It's definitely true, Matt.
You're also not the MVP. No
Right.
offense.
Exactly.
That's not offensive.
Exactly.
He's the MVP.
Yeah.
I think sometimes you have to have that in your mind when you're in the if you win it, I know Jokic is not a traditional MVP and it's taking people time to get their head around. The man won and he deserved it. Right. And he should get that kind of call right there. Get the benefit of the doubt in an elimination game at home. I think it's a flagrant 1. The one right there. Get the benefit of the doubt in an elimination game at home. I think it's a flagrant 1. the windup. It was a dangerous play. If he misses by a little bit, I know it's a frustration foul. Kind of reminded me of that Andrew Bynum frustration foul on J.J. Barea a million years ago, right?
Yeah, the clothesline. That was a little different. That was a little different.
Okay, it was a dangerous play, yeah. And I understand why they called it. I just think, man, it's hard to do that to the MVP in the elimination game.
Well, and to your point, if we start judging intent or start trying to interpret intent, like, if we do that all across life, what are we doing? Minority Report with Tom Cruise? Because here's the deal. Like, this is the example I put out on Twitter to somebody who questioned that. And I'm like, a fender bender, when you have an accident with your vehicles, an inch or two can make it a tragedy, right? But you're not judging someone and their fender bender off what could have happened if it became a tragedy. Right. He swung, right? He tried to knock the ball off, and it ended up hitting him in the face. It wasn't his intent.
Absolutely. And I didn't get to hear his thought process. I missed his post-game interview, but the fact that he said he wanted to change the momentum, I completely get that. It wasn't going for, I missed his post-game interview, but the fact that he said he wanted to change the momentum, I completely get that. It wasn't going for good with him right now. You get a technical foul, you fire up the season, maybe you get a flagrant foul, you fire up your team, you fire up the crowd. But again, to throw the MVP out in an elimination game on a borderline call, it's frustrating, and it shows how soft the NBA is now, which is unfortunate.
I think also he got hurt by the fact that this was reviewed. Like, if it was, when you saw it in real time, it might have been something you could just be flagrant run, let's move on. But because it's reviewed and you saw the full windup,
yes,
they almost had no choice at that point. But if that's part of the system here, right?
Did they? I think they had a choice. They could.
I mean, by the letter of the law, it's a flagrant too. He wound up. I know.
Intent, malicious. They use all the whatever the word I'm looking for. They use all these big words, malicious intent.
Yeah, you got it.
For my ear, but like I said, they try to make it seem like more than it was. But again, be aware of your surroundings. Know that you're in an elimination game in the home of the MVP, and to me, you let them slide with that. Give them a flagrant foul.
Yeah, I agree. All right, the Nuggets obviously had a difficult end to the season, so they overcame
a flagrant foul.
Yeah, I agree. All right, the Nuggets obviously had a difficult end to the season, so they overcame a ton, right? The injury to Jamal Murray, still finished third in the West, and advanced past Portland in the first round. So, Ramona, where does Denver go from here?
They have to decide how much money they want to spend. It's an expensive team now. Okay, that's the thing. When you trade for Aaron Gordon, and now you're going to have to pay Michael Porter Jr. too. He's eligible for a big extension here. Like, that's a lot of money to be spending on this core. I think you have to do it, though. I think you have to decide, okay, we went all in this year. I really like that they went in, and then Jamal Murray gets hurt. Okay, so this was a team that was in the Western Conference Finals last year. They make a big move. They looked great after they got Aaron Gordon until Jamal Murray got hurt. And now it gets to be really expensive. Okay, so Michael Porter Jr. eligible for the rookie extension. They have some free agents here. That's it. The free agents are under the rookie extension. They have some free agents here. That's it. The free agents are